Hey guys, so this is my follow-up on Dog to Dog Play from Dogs in the Same Household. We posted a video earlier this week and actually got lots of great videos of dogs playing super appropriate, which was exciting because I thought we would see more things that were problematic. But what I'm seeing from the post is that most of you are living with dogs who have really, really great play skills. And there was also some comments on, oh, I have to keep it really controlled, or I have a dog that's a fun police, and I have to interrupt that behavior. And that's also really exciting to me because that means you're, one, super aware of what's going on with your dog dynamic, and two, you are proactively interrupting behavior before it becomes a fight, which is what we want it to do, which is so good. So a couple of different topics came up when we were talking about the video I posted. People mentioned having uneven number of dogs being problematic, and I can say that's very situation specific. So in my case, I have attempted to walk the dogs in pairs. So take the puppy and the not mother, or the mother and the puppy, or the the older dogs together, and I get actually almost the same play dynamic, because Aussies really like to play where they grab each other and they roll each other. My previous Aussies did this too. So I would say it's pretty breed specific with my breed, and that's where when you own multiple dogs from the same breed, sometimes things are easier. When I have owned a variety of dogs from different breeds, so for a while I had a pointer, an Aussie, a Schnauzer, a Frenchie, really different dogs, really different play styles and needs, the play was harder to manage. Because with the Aussies, they seem to speak the same language. Versus, I do have a Chihuahua right now. He's a senior. He doesn't play much. He does not want to engage with the Aussies in play. He's not very comfortable with that. Sometimes if he's lying near me and he has a little toy and one of them gently engages with him with the toy, that would be okay. But that's pretty rare. I suspect if he was a younger dog, we might see that kind of play where he's looking for support from me more often, but because he's an older guy, he mostly sleeps, to be honest. And sometimes when he wants to play, I will excuse the other dogs from the room so that he can have the toy to himself and he doesn't have to worry about them taking it, because they would, especially if it's squeaking or something like that. So that's something we kind of manage when we have different breeds and we have really different sizes. So a 6-pound Chihuahua versus a 34-pound Aussie. It's a significant issue with size. So if they had an altercation, he would definitely get injured if they wanted to. Versus if I have two dogs that aren't necessarily getting along, they're both 30 pounds, less likely to have a severe injury right off the bat, at least. Although we can see severe injuries from same-sized dogs too. It's just less of a concern. So those of you who are living with dogs who have dramatic size differences, so more than 20 pounds either way, you do want to be more proactive in managing those dogs than if they're the same size. So when my puppies were really little, I was a lot more proactive in interrupting inappropriate like interactions with the adult dogs, because they were so little and they could get hurt so fast. And that is where using muzzles sometimes can be really effective. So my unrelated female, not the mother, when I introduced her to my litter, I actually had a muzzle on her. She was already muzzle trained and comfortable wearing it. And she was fine with the puppies. I had no behavior reason to think that she wasn't going to be, but because I didn't know, she'd never been introduced to a litter before, we muzzled as a preventative option, and it was good. She was good with them. I took it off. It was fine. But had she not been comfortable, if she went to snap at them, that would have been a good backup. So something to consider there. So we're going to go through more hiking videos, because my dogs play mostly outside, although I have a couple of videos to show you guys of play inside. That's really nice. But the crazy play happens outside when we're hiking. And I'll go through what I'm seeing when I interrupt, how I interrupt it, and the strategies I use to kind of keep everyone lower arousal at times, because the Aussies can escalate themselves. And while I don't have dog fighting happening between them ever, I don't want a dog to feel like they're being bullied or picked on or potentially injured, because some of the play gets pretty rough. They get crashing around, they could hit a tree. They could take each other down. They could fall down a slope. We live in a pretty intense terrain when we're hiking. It's busy out there. So I need to kind of keep things where they're still thinking and they're not just reacting and overexcited. All right, so what we're seeing here is some in-the-house play between mom and pup. They're playing really appropriately, and I have my fun police anti-dog over near me getting reinforced for being with me instead. So my mom and pup play really good together. Typically, if anything, the pup is more aggressive with her mother. She'll grab her and scruff her, and I have to interrupt that behavior. But typically, the behavior play we see between Story and Fable is really good. Even on hikes, it's easier to interrupt. Versus what you're seeing here is Navy with Fable. So Navy's the aunt, for all intents and purposes. Navy's pretty rough with her. Fable and Navy have the same play style. They like to grab and roll each other. Fable elicits play from Navy a lot. She loves Navy to chase her. She loves Navy to grab her. Sometimes both the adult Aussies are chasing and grabbing her. And when it gets to be a bit much, where they're not disengaging quickly, I'll interrupt it. So right there, what we saw was Navy actually disengaged pretty quickly, and then she's gonna go over to my husband to do a little de-escalation of arousal, where we ask them to sit and get reinforced for that. So that's a go-to when we're seeing this kind of crazy play. I'll let them do it a bit, but if they're really grabbing and holding, or there's multiple dogs involved in grabbing and holding, then we're calling them away. Have noticed a link between when they swim and get wet and play escalating in energy level and intensity. So typically after we get wet or have a swim, I get them to do a stop on the log or some sort of pedestal that's in the area. We do a lot of logs. So we use those logs because they're in our environment. They're naturally occurring there for the dogs to stop running and chasing, to pause. We'll usually ask for a sit and then reinforce them for waiting on these objects. So I find if I'm on a regular hiking route, the dogs will actually run up ahead and wait on the log for me. And that's a really great way when I'm out and about to actually have them de-escalate. If I didn't have the logs available, I would just do a sit and feed that way. I'm going to have a clip of that right away here where it's a sit and then James hand feeds them for a sit once they get to him. I prefer to do a scatter feed, and he doesn't really know how to do that yet. So he's feeding them by hand, and then I ask him to do a scatter. So typically before I do a scatter feed, I say scatter, and then I drop kibble everywhere. None of these dogs resource guard food from each other, so a scatter feed as a group is appropriate. If one of them was a food guarder, we would not do that, and I would work a lot on you get a treat, you wait, you get a treat, you wait. So we're seeing more of that escalating play where the older dog is really pinning the puppy down, but they're taking natural breaks and then they're running again. The puppy will come back and actually get the adult dog to chase her. So that is why I allow it to happen more. You can see in this particular clip, she actually goes to continue the play, even though we've called the adult dog in to do some de-escalation, where we're asking for sits and reinforcing that calming down period. It's a good idea to keep chase games short. Under a minute is pretty ideal. And then we also add in lots of recalls and again, lots of waiting on positional spots. So that's a rock we always stop at. They know they get rewarded for being on it, so they run up ahead and get on it. And then we'll ask them to get back up and wait and take treats. So that is how I monitor this over-arousal crazy play that my dogs do on hikes. We still hike everyone together because there's never any injuries and everyone seems to have fun, even though it can look pretty rough at times.
Are quite something. All done.
Okay, so we've seen them out on a hike. We've seen some of the tactics I use to de-escalate them because they're all enjoying the play. If any dog was a victim, I would say it'd be the mom dog Story. She tends to get grabbed and held a lot. She doesn't like that. So her strategy to deal with that is to come back to me. She waits in heel position. I ask them to leave it. And if they don't leave her and they don't de-escalate, I might even leash them up at that point. Because they really do like to grab and hold on to. That's kind of their breed nature. And it can be a bit much if it's too long of a time for sure. So the strategies we're using here is we're asking dogs to de-escalate. We're interrupting play so it's not going on for lengthy amounts of time. I'm asking the dogs to either sit where they are, I'm asking them to climb on objects and redirect their focus and reinforce them for that. Or I'm going to do a scatter feed where I'm saying scatter and then I'm dropping their food on the ground where they have to search and smell it out. I use scatter feeding a lot right after we've run into people or other dogs, and I don't want them to start engaging with outsiders. So that's working pretty good. They enjoy it, they'll stick on their food, and I do reinforce primarily with their kibble because my dogs are super food motivated by that. But if they weren't, I would bring higher value stuff, and depending on the dog I have at the time, certainly when I had a pointer, I had to use really, really high value rewards for him. So typically when I was out hiking and he was engaging in play, I would be feeding him hot dogs and cheese and all sorts of good stuff like that. I also would bring his tug and I'd redirect him onto a tug. He didn't love the herding dogs often when we were playing. Sometimes they damaged his recall a bit. He'd be coming in as called and they would go to chase and nip him. And that's where having different breeds can be a challenge. So I learned, I got to put the herding dogs in a sit stay, I got to relax them, and then I can deal with this very different type of dog who naturally wants to roam, doesn't recall naturally as well, and definitely has an aversion to being chased and bit. That was a problem for him versus the Aussies seem to like it. So those of you who are living with very different breeds of dogs, you may have to use more control, especially if the other dog doesn't look like they're enjoying the play. And that's the thing about play. It's not play if both parties aren't consenting to it, then it's bullying. So we need to make sure the victim dog or the dog that seems to be being bullied is actually wanting to engage in play and re-engages in it regularly with the other dog. And in this particular case where we're showing the Aussies, that is what's happening. So it's good to let them play to a certain extent, but always try to keep the energy levels down a notch because we don't want to be operating in that high arousal zone because it can flip into aggression. And I see that a lot, like in the kennel where we run things, we always want to keep energy levels low. Those dogs don't know each other as well, and we don't want fights to happen. So keep things as calm as possible while also letting our dogs be themselves and the breed that they are. So with herding dogs, they want to chase and bite and grab. I'm giving them a little bit of that, but it's not uncontrolled. So if you guys have more questions, you want to discuss more dog-to-dog play, I'd love to hear it. You can post topics on our group yourself. You can post videos on our group yourself. You can start your own threads. We would love to see the community just continue this discussion as it's really dynamic and every household is so different. We have different combinations of dogs and personalities, and all of us can learn from seeing what works in different environments, which is cool. So thank you to everyone who's already participated in the discussion, and please continue to do so.